Welcome to the Coaching Call. I'm Dr. Summer Kassmel, dentist, practice owner, and leadership coach for dental practice owners who are tired of being the hardest working person in a practice that still can't run without them. In this podcast, we're going to talk about what actually builds a practice that you can step away from. The systems, the leadership, the team accountability, and honestly, the foundational inner work it takes to stop being the bottleneck and start being the real CEO. This isn't a business podcast about vanity metrics. It's about building a team that holds a standard when you're not in the room, producing more without grinding harder, and finally, leading in a way that feels just like you. So let's get into it. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Coaching Call. I am, as always, just so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for listening. And in that last episode that I did, we just discussed more about triggers. And not as some just vague kind of buzzword I know we've all heard, but really what they actually are. An old wound that just keeps getting pressed on. You know, that front desk lead who gives you a look, the associate who asks a question in a tone you just don't like, and then your whole body reacts before your brain even really catches up. That reaction, as I said, it isn't about them. It's about something that's often older, that happened previously that it touches. And depending on how you're wired, really to be able to kind of keep yourself safe from feeling emotions, you probably respond in one of a few ways. You could shut down, you could go quiet, or you could get loud, try to control everything, maybe appease or kind of people please. Maybe you just swing between all of these, depending on the day. Well, as we discussed, none of it is a character flaw. It's really a pattern our nervous system's built a long time ago to keep us safe. And I asked you before as homework, just start noticing which one of them is yours, or do you use all of them? And here's my question for all of us today. If you did that work, these last few weeks, even just a little, I'm guessing like me, you ran into a wall. You may have even caught the trigger and you may have noticed it. You paused, you breathed, and it might have worked for some of the smaller stuff. But then on a random Thursday, something happened. The schedule fell apart. That same person called out again. A patient, maybe they were upset at the front desk, and all of a sudden, you snap right back to that old pattern before you ever saw it coming. So today, I hope to shed light to a question that can kind of sit underneath all of this, and one that I know I could not answer for a long time. And right now, just so you know, I'm talking to you, doctor, who you've done everything right. Not the one who necessarily just has no idea what to do. You're the doctor who you know what to do, and you've known for years. Likely, you've spent real money. You've hired the consultants. You've bought the systems that came pre-built in a binder, promising that this would finally be the thing that gets you organized. You've even taken, the CE and left your family as you've flown around to lots and lots of seminars. You've got a whole shelf of leadership books, if you're like me. And some time ago now, the question a mentor once asked me that I'd never really asked myself was, Summer, do you actually know if you're winning? You might know your metrics, you might know, your production numbers, and, you see you're growing. But do you know if you're actually winning? Do you know if you're winning in relationships, in life, and even how you feel day to day? Now, from the outside, I will say it did look like I was winning. And on the inside, it seemed like, for me, the practice was really just moving only as fast as I did. And I was the part that, if I'm honest, everybody seemed to just be waiting on all the time. And I would sometimes ponder, Is the problem me? Is this my leadership? Is it my time management? Am I not intentional enough? If you're like me, I did everything that I feel like the industry told me to do, and it still just didn't seem to make me necessarily feel happy in my own practices. And I now know it's not because I necessarily failed. It's because the thing I actually needed was never part of what was ever being sold. So here's what I've learned about why we keep buying the next thing, the next, hopefully just kind of quick fix. And it's not because we're lazy. It's quite the opposite. We end up noticing something is off in our practices. So of course, right? We search for the fix. We search for the course, the download, the consultant, the podcast, the book. And I will say it can even help. It can help for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But then the heaviness just comes back and we tell ourselves what every responsible person tells themselves. It's me. I must not be implementing hard enough, doing enough. However, I found this isn't a lazy person's problem. It's actually a high achiever's problem. And here's what took me years and lots of money to figure out. Every course, every system I purchased, ultimately, it ended up handing me some sort of tool, org chart, KPIs, scripts for those hard conversations. But no one ever asked, hey, who's going to be holding this tool? Is she in a place where she can use it really well and effectively? If you go back to what we talked about in episode 1, our triggers are wounds, and our reactions to them are really a pattern, really. Whether it's defending, leaving, appeasing, controlling, shutting down, a mix of all of them. And it's something that our nervous systems built years ago to kind of help us stay safe. And by safe, I just mean able to not have to feel certain uncomfortable emotions or notice in our bodies what we feel. Well, whatever that fix or strategy we just purchased was, here's the thing. It will always sit on top of that nervous system. So truly, no matter how good the tool, the consultant, the onboarding packet is, you'll default right back to that pattern the moment things get triggered. And that tool that you may have purchased, it'll fail or be less effective, and we'll blame the tool. And that's, like I said, not because the tool is bad. It's because the tool was never built to change, of course, what was sitting underneath it all. And I want to say, as you know, of course, I'm not a somatic practitioner, but I've had so much experience with it. Those people are the ones trained specifically in body-based nervous system work, and they're incredible, but that's not my lane necessarily. So if you do find anything we say here you want to go deeper in, I will link resources in the show notes. But what I can tell you from the leadership side, from my side, is this. Once you understand your reactions as your nervous system trying to protect you, not a character flaw, you can actually start working with it instead of white knuckling through every single day or just getting through the days or feeling numb, or if you're like me, like I had to control everything, balance all the balls perfectly in the air, spin every plate so that everything around me would not crumble. Strategy works, yes, when the leader underneath it has spent the time to create a healthy nervous system. Everything we buy to be the fixes for our offices will likely fail or be less effective without it. So here's what that looked like for me. In the past, I would come into my offices and kind of tiptoe around in my own office. I would walk on eggshells. I would never want to ask for too much because I already knew I'd get an eye roll, I'd get a pushback. And that was the one pattern I often found I used, was just kind of appeasing and people pleasing until I finally let the resentment build too much. And I can remember a consultant handing me just the perfect script for the exact conversation with the people of my team. And it was really good stuff. But of course, I wasn't aware at the time that before that script would actually be beneficial, it would work. I needed to look at why. Why was I moving to people pleasing first? And once I really did do the work, it's not necessarily as easy as you think, but the same conversation with that script would feel completely different in my body. And crazy enough, it landed completely different with my team too. And even better, it felt like moving forward, once I had fixed the foundation, things got much, much better consistently. The tools can now work. They could work for me now that my nervous system wasn't constantly in hyperdrive and overdrive or shutdown. And here's the part almost I find no one necessarily discusses is even when the strategy works, when the metrics do end up going up, I find with coaching so many people, we still don't necessarily feel like we're winning in our lives, and especially with our connection to the people around us. We're still tired. We still feel weighted down. We still feel like it all depends on us, like we can't fully exhale or even sleep through the night. And that's because feeling successful was never going to come, as I said before, from the number on the spreadsheet. I've now come to find it's from believing there's enough to go around instead of bracing from scarcity, from expecting things to work out instead of just constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, from treating ourselves like someone worth being kind to instead of running a constant, just little verdict in my head that you're not doing enough. You're not enough. And a leader, I find we feel that lasting sense of winning, of success, of joy. Once that foundation, it has been built from the inside and by us, no one else. And as dentists, leaders of the practice, we are often in our lives exalted and appreciated for all of our achievements, for getting so much stuff done, being strong, being smart. And with that, I've now learned, sometimes can come with nervous systems that are fried, that are worn out, that are redlining, even when we don't really know. We don't notice it because it just feels like normal. Now, I do need to make sure to say and be very clear, we will be talking strategy. We will be talking communication skills, tools, things like that, hard conversations, systems. All of that matters and it is needed. I know I've bought multiple practices and I'm definitely pro strategies, but it's the order that matters more than anything. If we can steady the doctor or the leader first, it's always going to be, the first step. It's like replacing almost like a pair of glasses that have been worn forever. And the person wearing them doesn't even realize. They had no idea that they've been dirty all along. It felt like normal. And slowly, as they've been cleaned, the view gets better. The glasses even somehow feel lighter. And then those strategies, the CE, the tools, they end up working better with that better vision, that better eyesight. So I want to have you doctors and leaders really hear this. You're not the bottleneck because you're not good enough or implementing hard enough. I know for the majority of us, it's because we were handed tools for years that nobody ever knew to taught us how to hold them from a neutral and steady place. That's just merely missing information. It's not a personal failure. And great news is it's fixable. Once you know, it's actually a real thing. So let's think back to the pattern you started noticing from episode 1. The appeasing, people-pleasing, control, defending, getting loud, arguing, maybe just shutting down, or a mix of all of them. For your action items this week, pick one moment where that pattern starts to show up. A schedule falling apart, a hard conversation, a team member pushing back. pause. Remember, take the breath, the deep breath, before you respond. And then ask yourself this question. What am I actually trying to avoid feeling right now? Fear, shame, not enough, failure? Whatever comes up for you, where do you feel it and what is it? Do you feel it in your chest, neck, stomach, shoulders? Now, as you do this, if you're like me, when I was told to do this, in the beginning, I would think, ugh, yeah, I am really frustrated that my team is not working harder to fill the schedule. And yes, I know what I'm afraid of. It's losing money. Well, when I really sat with that feeling, I realized, yes, it was true what I said. But the deeper thing was I was afraid to fail. And I could feel it in my chest as it tightened. And I would sit there and really think for a bit and then gently ask myself again that same question. And I found I was afraid of not being able to pay my team. And then if I'm honest, I could start spiraling and catastrophizing that the whole place would fail. I would be seen as a failure and thus not enough. My little nervous system had definitely over-engineered a failure detection system that kept me in scarcity mindset for a long time. I held on so tightly for so long. So with that one action item, asking that question, what are you afraid of right now? Please know you don't need to fix anything right now. It's really just the first piece, just noticing it. And at the end of the week, we can look back and see, are there any patterns showing up? I know I definitely had mine. A calm, clear mind and a body that isn't working against you. A way of leading that doesn't cost you yourself to keep going. And ultimately, living a life where you embody grace and can truly feel the joy and gratitude of what's around you. That's the work. That's the work that we're doing here. So, for the homework, check the show notes for that action item worksheet. And there is more information on somatic practitioners. Thank you again for joining me on the coaching call. Now, let's get to work. See you next time. Thanks so much for being here. If anything from today's episode sparked something for you, go to summerkassmel.com/podcast-bonus. That's where we keep all the tools and guides that go with the show. So you can take what you heard and actually put it into practice. See you next time.